Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Today on CityCast Denver, a group of masked vigilantes has been terrorizing local restaurants, and they seem to be winning. So it's time to bring some facts to the Foie Gras fight. Producer Olivia Jewell-Love joins me to shine a light on these angry animal rights advocates, as well as a quietly huge zoning change on the Westside, and we respond to the deluge of comments we got on yesterday's episode about Denver rents. Today is Tuesday, January 7th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, Olivia.
Hey, Paul.
So, Olivia, you're from Kansas City.
I am.
Did you happen to watch any of the Broncos-Chiefs game on Sunday?
No, but I actually did catch the Broncos overtime game.
Oh, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one to see. The Sunday one was not much of a game.
That was actually crazy. I was watching that and we were like, oh! I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan for sure, but
I know. I wanted to out you.
Yeah, I'm proud. Out me all you want. But yeah, we were watching that and that was a great game. It was crazy.
Fun.
It was really fun to watch.
I mean, the whole football's been great this year. And the Broncos are going to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's exciting for you.
It is exciting.
The Chiefs are going to be there too.
Yeah, they'll be there. They're very good. We did not see their best players on Sunday.
No, they had to. Travis was probably on a date with Taylor. Patrick was, busy. So they had stuff to do. They couldn't. They were skiing.
This is the kind of analysis that our listeners are coming to us for on sports.
Big sports analysis girl.
Where was Travis taking Taylor out?
Where would they go in Denver? Where would Travis and Taylor go in Denver?
We had this conversation around when she came for the Eras tour, and I think the best answer, some listener wrote in, they were like, Potager. That's where Taylor would go. And I think that's a great
where
pick.
Would Travis take Taylor? He would take her to Casa Bonita because Travis is corny.
And he could get them in too.
Yeah, he could. He'd probably rent out the whole Casa Bonita, and I love him for it.
And they'd have a great time.
It would be so fun.
Hey, let's get to some business here before we get to the show. We have something so cool that we've been working on, something we've been planning for a while, something we've never done before. And we are just so excited to be finally able to talk about it with you all because we're throwing a big event. It's called Heyday. We're putting on an indoor fair with urban flair, like a classic county fair, but with a very cool Denver twist. So you can join us on Saturday, March 8th for vintage arcade games, classic carnival games and prizes with so much Denveriness thrown into it. Like
snowboard simulator.
A killer snowboard simulator. That sounds very fun. We're going to have a photo booth inside a vintage VW bus. It's family friendly. If you're a listener of the show, I think there's going to be tons of stuff there that you'll love. There's going to be a grandstand stage of performances. Some of the friends of the show, Josh Emerson's going to be there.
We're going to be there.
We're going to be there for crying out loud. So seriously, tickets are available now. They're affordable. Bring your friends, bring your family. It's called Heyday. HeydayDenver.com is where you can get those tickets. $15 for adults, $10 for kids. Get them now. That's what I recommend.
We're going to be there all day, hanging out, taking pics in the photo booth with you. Put it on your fridge forever.
Oh, that's a nice offer.
Yeah. I want to be in the photo booth pic with everyone. We're going to fit every...
You're going to be a permanent installation in the photo booth.
I'm just going to sit in the photo booth all day as a prop. And members, we're going to do a big members picture. And all the members are going to cram into the photo booth together. And we're going to take a picture together.
I love that.
And everyone can get one to put on their fridge.
Well,
members only. So become a member today.
Become a member today. And see you all at Heyday on March 8th. HeydayDenver.com. Shall we get to the news?
Yes. So, Paul, you got a really spicy email.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a juicy email because,
that's kind of
we'll get
not
to it.
Okay.
No, not on this one, but it was interesting.
An interesting email. Tell me about it.
Friday afternoon, 4:29 p.m. So
the best time to break news.
The best time to break news. I got an email from someone who identified themselves as Thomas Gorman. though their identity I have not confirmed, and previous coverage of this story has called this into question, perhaps a pseudonym.
Pseudonym, okay.
Thomas writes, I'm reaching out on behalf of the Denver Duck Alliance and the anti-foie gras protest at Mizuna French Bistro on New Year's Eve. A thing that I did not know happened, but
And
apparently
this email is
happened.
to you?
To me personally.
Okay.
Video footage shows confrontations between peaceful protesters and restaurant staff, including incidents where protesters were thrown to the ground, kicked, and subjected to unwanted physical contact. The incident resulted in one arrest, public outcry on social media, and led to Mizuna's subsequent decision to remove foie gras from their menu.
Wow.
Dramatic, right?
Very.
And like New Year's Eve, so like no reporters were on to cover this, I guess. I had totally missed that this happened. Maybe it was a big deal on social media, but can we watch some of the video that they sent too?
Please.
Okay.
Mizuna of Denver, we officially like to introduce you to the Duck Alliance. As long as you continue to shove metal holes down animals' throats, we will
What's a sound?
Come on, get out. You want to shove metal holes down animals' throats?
Hey, Mizuna, what do you say? How many ducks have died today? Get out.
So I think that gives you a sense of the video at least.
They had a cowbell.
They had a cowbell. So what we saw in that video is a group of protesters, some wearing masks, coats, jackets, bullhorns in Mizuna, a small restaurant over in Capitol Hill, that Bonanno Row next to Vesper Lounge and Don's down the block. And then halfway through the video, you see a man who I later confirmed with Frank Bonanno that is him grabbing one of the protesters with the bullhorn and sort of pulling him away from some of the customers who are just enjoying a New Year's Eve dinner. Oh, gosh. I know. This has never happened to me in a restaurant. I've never had protesters barge in. And
Gosh, imagine you're there New Year's Eve, you're like half a bottle of champagne in. People come in with the cowbell.
Didn't know I was getting a show.
Yeah, for real. I'm like, is this a flash mob?
Well, here's the thing about I could see how it might feel fun and exciting, but for the Bonannos, this was really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are they protesting? I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about the protesters first. So they call themselves the Duck Alliance. They're a group of what seems like 7 to 10 volunteers. This is based on previous reporting from Westward.
Okay.
Like I said, I tried to call Thomas Gorman, haven't heard back from him yet. But it seems like, small group of people, maybe a dozen, all volunteers, and they've been doing this for like 2 years. Mizuna is not their first target. Like 2 years ago, they started protesting outside some restaurants owned by High Hospitality, which includes Uchi Denver, that sushi place. Yeah. They, I guess, have foie gras nigiri with sweet eel sauce. And then according to Westward, who reported on this a couple of months ago, 6 months ago, things took a turn. These protesters started coming into the restaurant and pulling out their horns and sirens, yelling stuff on bullhorns in the middle of the restaurant, making reservations, sitting down, and then a server comes up and they pop up at the table using the bullhorns, being very disruptive. This is a quote from the owner, someone from Uchi. And then so they showed up at personal residences of these. God. Yeah, they called an investor. I talked to Jacqueline Bonanno after this. She said that she heard a story about the protesters calling one of the investors in High Hospitality, who then called the restaurant to pressure them to take foie gras off the menu.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's thorough.
Yeah, they've also done this at Glow Noodle House, which has apparently taken foie gras off the menu. Palace Arms at the Brown Palace, which did the same. A week after they were informed that protests were going to start, they were like, okay, we don't want any piece of this. Fair. We won't serve it anymore.
Fair. So what is this dish? Why are they so against it?
Well, it's kind of like, it's not really in fashion anymore, at least from what I know about the food world. It's kind of like old school luxury. It's a dish made with like fatty goose or duck liver. And it's super traditional. I mean, some cultures like French, it's like a very old school, but it used to be made by force feeding ducks or goose with like certain types of barley or other foods, and you stuff it down their throats in order to make the liver extra fatty when you slaughter it. And then it creates this taste when you actually cook the liver that is, according to chefs and some food lovers, totally unique.
Huh.
Here's a clip of Anthony Bourdain talking about it, because he was a big fan of foie gras.
Okay.
I happen to think that foie gras is one of the most delicious things on earth. and one of the 10 most important flavors in gastronomy. And there are a few nicer things you can do for your holiday guests than serve them a delicious, unctuous terrine of foie gras around the holiday season.
Huh. But like to the average Denverite, is this something I would want to order off the menu?
I don't know. If you're interested in like unique food experiences, maybe, but maybe you're feeling sympathetic to these activists. You know, that's a rising tide here in Denver. After last year, we went through this whole fight over the lamb slaughterhouse, and those activists who took a very different approach to making their point, putting their campaign on the ballot instead of
sounds pretty
showing up to restaurants.
Specifically inhumane. I mean, if it's still done the way you said it was old-fashioned, if it's still done that same way.
Yeah, I think different people do it different ways.
Okay.
Like the activists, Jacqueline Bonanno told me that they had been emailing with these activists, going back and forth a few weeks. And then at one point, one of the activists came in, sat down at the bar, and then pulled out some photos of a goose being like nailed to a wall and having like grain stuffed down its throat. Apparently that's how it was done in France somewhere. There was like some farm in France, according to Jacqueline. But she told me that they sourced their foie gras from a place in upstate New York. Okay. And again, that's where Anthony Bourdain visited in that video. And here's a clip of him showing how they do it. It's like a metal tube. It takes a second. I mean, he describes it in this clip.
Okay.
It sounds much more humane.
Now, the vegan activists who are using this as a spear point issue as step one to get all meat banned would have you believe that the ducks are nailed in place, connected to a tube, and jammed full of food for hours until they nearly explode. But this is what it's really like. It takes seconds. Same feeder every time, done by hand, and quick. You see worse in the pay-per-view film on the hotel channel, and that's people, for God's sake.
All right. Well, I could see both sides of that, I guess. You know,
yeah, it depends on how you feel about animals. I mean, if you really believe that animals, like, they have consciousness and feel pain and that's really important to you, you get why people might take extreme steps.
Showing up to the chef's house, though, seems a little extra.
And it's not just that. No, I mean, this I would say that it crosses a line. What this Duck Alliance group has been doing, because it's showing up to the chef's house. They are barging into Mizuna. They're cursing at Frank and Jacqueline by name, shouting at them. They're after some of the emails went back and forth with the Bonannos, they went on social media and they started posting comments on employees' pages.
Oh my God.
They one of the employees apparently had recently adopted a kitten, and one of these Duck Alliance people commented on a picture of a kitten and said, how would you feel if that kitten had its throat ripped open and had barley stuffed down into its stomach?
My God.
Like threatening, how would you feel if that kitten had its throat slit?
Whew.
That's a lot. You would call that cyberbullying, I think.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. So after all that, was their protest successful? Did they take it off the menu?
Right. They claim that it was successful in that email, but the Bonannos say differently. And it's actually more nuanced than this, because the Bonannos are like, it's not on the menu. It's a seasonal, occasional thing that we like to bring in for special occasions like the holidays. Okay. Like they said they bought like two loaves of foie gras in December, and they had it on a temporary seasonal menu for December, and then New Year's Eve was the last time they had any available, and they sold out before the protesters even barged in to the restaurant that night.
Oh.
So they're like, they don't know what to do, because they're like, as a restaurant, we can't handle the disruption to our business of these protesters, because we're up against it. The minimum wage just went up. We've been talking about restaurants, how hard it's been right in Denver lately all the time, and they're not immune to that. So they're like, we don't know what to do, because we want to be able to offer our customers something special, because we have this farm that we love and that people love this foie gras, but we don't want to risk having what they called terrorists. The Bonannos used the word terrorists barging into our restaurant, causing unknowable amounts of violence, is what they said. The Bonannos were like, when they barge in with ski masks, look at the way the world is. We don't know if they're armed. We don't know if this is an active shooter situation. So that's how Frank defended himself when I asked him about grabbing this guy and bear hugging him. He was like, I thought there was a shooter in my restaurant. I had to protect my family and my customers.
Yeah, that's fair. That's so scary.
I know. I feel the same way. I mean, you never know.
You don't.
You hear stories all the time.
Yeah, I don't know how I would have reacted as a customer in there if that had happened, if I was just sitting there having a meal.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It'd be wild.
The Bonanos said one person dove underneath their table.
Oh.
I think that would have been me. I would have been right there with them.
Yeah. Scary stuff.
Very scary. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Bonanos, whether these protests continues. It's something I'll be watching for sure. I mean, especially after the fight with the slaughterhouse last year, I'm very interested in the different tactics these animal welfare advocates are taking.
Did those other places that they protested take it off the menu?
Yeah, Glow Noodle House has, Uchi Denver has, the Palace Arms at the Brown Palace has. I'm not sure how many other restaurants serve foie gras, but I'm sure these protesters are going to let us know at some point.
Yeah, well, guess we'll see.
And then maybe the city will ban it. Other cities have.
Oh.
There's been fights over this in California, New York City. New York City went back and forth in 2019, and then they lifted their ban later the same year.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting trend. These protests pop up, and then restaurateurs push back, and it's one of those things in the margins.
Yeah, well, guess we'll have to watch and see what happens.
I guess so.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Let's move on. Our next story. Fascinating situation developing in city council. The Denver Post reported recently on a decision Denver's community planning and development made quietly a couple of months ago could have big implications for Denver's ongoing angst over the cost of living and development and change, all those great big picture problems and issues that we talk about all the time, especially housing. Olivia, what exactly is this decision?
Yeah, so this group announced that until further notice, they're not going to recommend approval for any rezoning applications in 6 neighborhoods if they sought to allow developers to build higher density projects. So basically, it's kind of like a weird situation where they said like property owners can still resubmit these applications for rezoning, but they're basically telling them like, due to these current conditions, we're most likely going to deny your application for rezoning. And the biggest reason they're giving for this is to fight against gentrification of this area that's historically Latino.
Interesting. So these are rezoning applications that are typically like developers coming in to buy like a plot of land where there once was a single family home. And they're maybe wanting to build like duplexes or townhomes, some more density.
Yeah. And so they don't want row homes. They don't want single family. They just don't want it to be redeveloped, rezoned.
Where did this come from?
So this happened in the fall.
Okay.
They proposed this in the fall. And Councilwoman Jamie Torres is a big proponent of this. And it's coming from a lot of the fact that they've noticed that gentrification is a big problem in the city. A lot of people have been noticing that. And so they're trying to, I guess, slow down the issue. And so this is kind of their attack on an area that's like got these old small homes, and they're trying to, like, I guess, attack it from that angle.
So like preserving the character of the community as it has been and trying to slow down this wave of development and interest.
It's not even so much the character. It's like trying to keep it affordable for the people that have lived there for generations and who are trying to build generational wealth and trying not to price them out. Because what's happening is they're building these big developments of these big like townhomes and duplexes and stuff. And then people who have lived there in this neighborhood for generations can't afford them. Because they lived in these old small houses and they build these fancy, new shiny things, and they can't afford them. So they can't live in the area anymore.
It's such a familiar story. I mean, I think everyone listening can probably point to a block in their neighborhood and say, oh yeah, that clearly happened right here. I mean, this is such a Denver story, last 15 years.
Right. And so this is their, idea of like, okay, let's try to limit this.
Yeah. But some people are excited about this, is the densification. What are these, what are the YIMBYs saying about this change?
Well, the YIMBYs are kind of like, what are you doing here? they're like, the only way for us to get to a point where we're going to have affordable housing and enough housing is by densifying everywhere. And so they're like, we need to do this everywhere. And by essentially kind of blocking, developers trying to densify and stuff, you're hindering this effort. And, it's not going to stop gentrification because this is going to happen other places. And if we don't have enough housing everywhere, it's just going to happen to another neighborhood.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny how affordability is on both sides of this. You always, everyone, I mean, it's the problem everyone has. It's too expensive to live in Denver.
Yeah.
But, and everyone wants to, achieve it in different ways for different people.
Right. Right.
It reminds me of the conversation I had on the show yesterday with this landlord lobbyist guy, Drew Hamrick, who I think is very interesting. I'm glad that he came on the show to talk to us about why rents aren't going down more. But when we were talking about this interview, when we were working on it, you had strong feelings about it. How did you think about that, especially in light of this situation on the West Side?
He was interesting. I felt like I know what his job title is. I know what he does. He is advocating for landlords. And I felt like that was very apparent in this conversation. And I just felt like he really was extremely out of touch with what it actually is like to be a renter in Denver. And just some of the things he said were just like, have you tried to do that?
Yeah.
Like when he was like, oh, you never pay the full price for an apartment. You always negotiate.
Yeah. I got a text from a friend with that exact line as well. They sent us a laughing face emoji, like as if anyone negotiates for the rent.
I've tried because
you have.
Yeah. So most recently I knew my rent was going to go up at my last apartment. And so my dad, God bless him, he was like,
Chiefs fan, sorry. Unfortunately, sadly, won't hold it against him.
He's a former Broncos fan though. So we'll say that he lived in Denver in his youth. But anyway, he was like, you just got to go up there and tell him not to raise your rent. You got to negotiate. He sounded like this guy. So I walked my ass up there and I was like, please don't raise my rent. I was like, I have never paid rent late. I am a great tenant. I've never been noisy, never anything wrong. Please do not raise my rent. And they just looked at me and they were like, we don't have any control of that. They were like, looked at me like I was so stupid. And I was like, okay. And, beyond that, the most baffling thing, when I moved in, so just kind of slightly personal story. I moved in.
Go for it.
I had to move in on a singular day. I was leaving a domestic violence situation. I had to move in on a specific day. I needed to move in that day, like preferably that afternoon because, it was an urgent situation. Yeah. So my parents came and they were helping me. My mom goes into the office and they had an apartment and she goes, she's fleeing a domestic violence situation. We need this now. Can we lower the rent? I will pay a year's worth of rent up front right now.
Jeez. Yeah.
If you can please lower the rent. They said no.
They were like, no, the algorithm tells us what it is.
Yeah. They were just like, no. She even offered cash. Yeah. She went full on, I will get cash. No.
That's wild.
And
these big companies, they
had no control. I mean, these people in the office just looked at her like she was a drug dealer. Like, why do you have so much cash, lady? But they were just like, we can't do that. Yeah. And so it's it just felt ridiculous when he said that. I was like, have you tried doing that?
I think you're getting to something that I thought was really interesting in that interview is the information imbalance. Because he was talking about the company Real Page that offers this rent setting algorithm and all the data that gets sucked up into that and how valuable that is for landlords because that's why they all want to participate and why they all want to buy this software is because they get advantage of all that data. And you in that situation and so many other renters, they have no information on the market. No. You don't know what a comparable one bedroom in the same neighborhood costs.
No, and
you're not going to take your day to go do all that research. I mean, you could.
And I look up multiple apartments and see, but it was just funny. He's like, you can just, when he said oh, if you find one that's one price, you can just, get another that's a better price. Yeah, I also thought that was funny because, when I moved here, I got into that apartment, just very lucky, got in there same day, was able to move in, just bad situation, able to get there. It happened. But if I was there and had a predatory landlord that was like charging me a bunch of fees, which they did, but you know, I paid them because I needed a place to live. I did not have the luxury of being able to say, I don't want to pay this much, I'm going to move, because it costs so much to move in and out of an apartment. I just did this. A couple months ago. Like, to even get the keys to my new apartment, I had to pay $2,500. Like, to even get the keys. Most people don't have like a spare $2,500, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have that money when I first moved out here. I was working like, I'm not going to say how I was working. I made less than a car wash employee, like, you know, so I could not have just moved out if my landlord was bad and just moved somewhere new. That's a privilege if you have money. That's if you don't have money, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I stayed there for those years because that's what I could afford, because I knew it would be so expensive to leave. So like like a lot of the points he made just felt very privileged. Also, opting out of stuff. You can't opt out of stuff. When have you ever been able to do that?
Yeah, that was funny too.
When have you ever been able to do that? I can't say, okay, I don't want the package service. They would just laugh at you. They would like literally laugh at you. Be like, oh no, like I don't want to use the gym. They would laugh at you. They'd be like, you can't pick and choose. I don't know. I just like a lot of that stuff. It's very like as a renter and as somebody who's been going through this, it's like, you know, you got to, if you've experienced it, you know that like that stuff isn't true. And then, like, of course they say that stuff, you know, to make it sound better on paper. But it's like, if you've actually been through it, you know what's real and you know what's happening.
Yeah. Well, let's go to one more quick break and then let's come back and listen to some of the responses we got to that episode, because we have got some really interesting takes from listeners as well. All right, we're back. So right before the break, we teased this. We got a bunch of interesting responses from you all, our hilarious and brilliant listeners, to the episode we had yesterday on the show with Drew Hamrick, the landlord lobbyist. He works for the Apartment Association of Metro Denver. So Olivia, who do you want to hear from first?
I kind of like this. Let's do this one from Reddit first.
Okay.
Okay, this is from Pendleton on Reddit, with numbers in the name instead of E's.
Okay.
But I'm not going to try to say that.
Thanks for weighing in, Pendleton.
Solid episode. Interesting to hear the landlord perspective, but almost everything he said was clearly a polished talking point. I do agree that for Denver, the solution to our housing issues is generally doing everything we can to increase the supply, and then over time, the market will adjust.
See, right there, that's it right there. Everyone knows you got to increase the supply to lower the prices, to catch up to demand or overtake demand, but no one wants to deal with the consequences of that.
That said, it's hard to take his math and investment perspective at face value when the bias is so clear.
Yeah.
And the idea that fees are transparent is comical to anyone that has ever been a renter here. Sure, some landlords are great, and they are just giving you the choice of amenities. However, that's the best case scenario. Most of the big buildings just slip stuff in to take advantage of people that aren't reading leases or legal agreements every day. You should maybe have to show all required fees in the rent, the minimum monthly cost without any options, and the maximum cost with all options. Then a one-page top sheet with all the costs as line items. And anything charged on top of that has to be returned 5 times if they overcharged and are found liable.
That's an interesting idea. That's something Drew and I were talking about after the interview a little bit. He was like, he wanted to talk about the Ticketmaster stuff and the fee transparency and how that might apply to rents and landlords. He seemed a little bit worried about that. I wonder if lawmakers are talking about that.
That would be nice to have I kind of had something similar when I moved into this place. It was basically that, but just for to get my keys, I had a page of everything I had to pay to get my keys.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like this, but like just for one day, and so it had all the line items of each thing I had to pay.
Yeah.
I like looking at it because
it's easier.
It's funny and sad and easier. And they highlighted all the stuff that I owed. So it would be nice. It would be nice. I like this idea.
All right. I think we got time for maybe one more, Olivia. What's your favorite one?
How about this one? Southwest Denverite here. Important episode on housing and development in Metro Denver. Thank you for not shying away from bringing on a guest from the other side.
Appreciate that. We do try.
We try. Unfortunately, year after year, we look for a magic wand via regulation to lower housing costs. The marginal gains some of these policies bring are more than offset by slowing overall housing growth. I actually wish it were as easy as just demonizing developers, because then we wouldn't have to deal with the inevitable change and heartache that tons of new housing brings to our beloved neighborhoods. But it is not. And the sooner we realize that these guys don't win at our expense, the better off we will be. Nowhere in the country is gaining residents faster while managing housing costs better than the Sun Belt region. Look at their policies. They're letting people build.
Interesting.
Where's the Sun Belt region? I'm sorry.
Okay, the Sun Belt is a region in the United States that stretches from the southeast to the southwest.
Okay.
Southern Virginia, Florida, Southern California, like the whole South.
Okay.
I don't know.
So they're
I mean,
doing
we're
it
going
right.
to have to look into that, I guess.
So they're doing it.
I don't think people
They're
would say that
building.
like Los Angeles is doing it right.
Well-
LA has the same problem we have.
But like Texas
Texas, maybe,
is building.
they're building.
Okay.
But that's definitely, I mean, I keep hearing that conversation about like how these like urban rural divides and like this is a whole nother thing. Anyway, thank you so much to our listeners. That was another interesting comment. Appreciate the thoughtful comments and perspectives on this one.
Good one. Thanks, guys.
Well, Olivia, let's call that the end of the show.
That's the end.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Hey, don't forget, get your ticket to Hey Day,
Hey Day.
March 8th,
you there.
heydaydenver.com.
See you there.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell the Duck Alliance about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then. Hey!
Hey Day.
Hey, it's time to talk about
Hey Day.
Hey Day. Hey Day.
It's actually in all caps. Hey Day.
We should invite Charlie Day.
What? Oh, I don't. Well.
Didn't realize that was such a generational.
To be fair, I do not know actors.
Yeah. Okay.
Except Lizzie Goldsmith. Favorite local actress?
Up and coming local star.